Okay, great. So, as you can see up on the screen, this is the 13th part of the first five books of the Bible. So when we get to the end of the Torah, which is the first five books of the Bible, then that title will then change. But anyway, we're still trying to climb up in the air. So we're remember my brother one time told this joke, and it was a man looking out of an airplane window, and he says, "Boy, those people look like ants on the ground." He says, "They are ants, are stupid. We haven't taken off yet." So anyway, so it's kind of a bit like that, you know. So, but so we're going to be looking at the book of Numbers, and I found that Numbers is a very, very interesting book. Now, the title of it doesn't lend itself to a whole lot of interest because the first chapter is about counting how many people are there, you know. And so when you see Numbers, you know, you go, okay, we'll skip this. But there's some very, very significant things that are mentioned, and that is the names of leaders, names of people that are involved in this process, how it is put together, where the tribes are located around the tabernacle, and how they stay, how they move, how they follow. All these kinds of things are very, very pertinent. So, and so with the book of Numbers, there's a lot of negative things that go on. There's a lot of disobedience and silliness that happens with the Israelites. But God is always faithful to his own character, as the Bible says. Even when we're faithless, he remains faithful because he cannot deny himself. So God remains faithful to his people despite themselves. Now, there is punishment. There is consequences for what takes place. And we're going to look at some of those stories. So there are some strange stories in the book of Numbers. There's the whole thing with the bronze serpent. There's Balaam's talking donkey and all that situation. And so there are some odd things that are in the book, but they would be good to look at. So needless to say, we're not going to get terribly far today in the book, but we will do a quick outline and just look at a few different things here. So anyway, the first thing I want to look at is the title of Numbers. So the as it is called Numbers, that is not always what it has been called. Okay, so the one of the titles in Hebrew, as you see on the screen there, is Vaya Dabar, which means "and he said." Those are the first words in the book. So it's actually a word, okay? But I know you see three words there, and I say it's the first word, but in Hebrew it's Vaya Dabar. So when you connect all that together, what that means is "and he said." So because when the Jews in history finally were getting their act together, as it were, the Torah was read from every week, every Sabbath. There was a portion of the Torah that was read, and over a period of a year, they would cover the entire Torah on the Sabbath day, which was their Saturday. So there was now this might sound strange because we only have 52 weeks in the year, but they had 54 readings. Okay, and that took into consideration some other holidays where those readings took place. So, but there was 54 readings where they read from the Torah, and each one of those readings was titled with whatever the first words were of that particular section. Okay, so this is the fourth book in the Pentateuch, and so one of its titles was this first word. So this is what it was called for quite a long time, "and he said." So now one of the other titles is Bimidbar, which was the fifth word in the book in Hebrew, which meant "in the wilderness." And that's probably a more descriptive setting or descriptive word for what the book's about, because the book is about what happens when the Israelites move from Mount Sinai and get to the borders with the Promised Land. Now that should have taken a short period of time. I'll tell you what that is in a minute, but it ended up taking a long period of time. So this is about being in the wilderness, and anyway, so that was, I would say, probably the more common book name. So when the Old Testament was translated into Greek, which is what is referred to as the Septuagint, it was referred to as arithmoi, which is where we get the word arithmetic. And that was in reference to the census that they were taking. So that's what the book was called in the Greek Septuagint. So it is called arithmetic. So that then, I think, when Jerome then translated the Old Testament into Latin, then you get this, which is Libri Numeri, which is the Book of Numbers. So that's what he called it in the Latin Vulgate, which is the Latin translation of the Bible. It is from that translation that the Catholic Church actually gets a lot of their translations. Okay, so they're not bad translations, but they use the Latin Vulgate as their main base, as opposed to going back farther into Hebrew and Greek. They just accept whatever Jerome translated. So there are some translation issues there, but by and large, it's all right. So the title of the book is quite varied. It could mean, and he said, it could mean in the wilderness, it could mean arithmetic, or as we have it in our own English Bibles today, Book of Numbers. So that's where all that comes from. But really the book is about the wilderness wanderings. It should have taken 11 days, okay, to travel from Mount Sinai to Canaan, which was the Promised Land. 11 days. But because of disbelief at the wilderness of Paran in chapters 13 and 14, it took 40 years. Okay, so disbelief is a very, very serious thing. And there was a very serious consequence because of that disbelief. So we will look at chapters 13 and 14 probably next week. But that's where they send in the 12 spies. 10 of the spies came back and says, we can't do this because there's big people up there, and they're huge, and they're giants, and they're big, and they're huge, and that's what they concentrated on. And 2 of the spies came back, Joshua and Caleb, and they says, well, yeah, there's big people up there, but we can take it because God says that's our land, so we can go and do it. But democracy prevailed because it was 10 against 2, and so they didn't go. So everybody of that generation then died, except and so then didn't get into the Promised Land except Joshua and Caleb. So and then the next generation did get in. So I'll just start looking at an outline of the book, and I'll have some sort of pictures and illustrations and diagrams along the way here. So basically, the first part of the book is about the preparation for the journey. Okay, so what's been happening up to this point during Exodus was the people of Israel came out of Egypt, and they then went, were led by God to the base of Mount Sinai, which is where Moses receives the 10 Commandments. And God then gives the instruction about the tabernacle, all the furniture, how the thing is supposed to be set up. And so then Leviticus is then about the sacrificial system, what sacrifices would be offered. And all of this was to make the people holy, make them right with God. You make sacrifices, you do certain things in order to establish that right relationship with God. So, and then at the very beginning of the book of Numbers there, it's where Moses was then able to go into the tabernacle, whereas before he couldn't get in, and God had to speak to him from inside and to the outside. So, but now he's inside because it worked. Okay, the whole sacrificial system worked. So from the beginning of Numbers, they're getting ready to pack up and move from Mount Sinai to the Promised Land. And again, that should have taken 11 days, but it took 40 years. So, so there's physical organization that goes on in the first 4 chapters. Now, let me just throw up a diagram here. So, as you can see in the middle, you have the tabernacle of meeting. Okay, so that is so you have a few different things in here. You have the brazen altar. Okay, and well, as you can see, east is that way. And then the other thing right in front of the tabernacle itself is the basin, which is where the priests would have washed their hands and washed their feet. And the tabernacle itself, which is the small rectangle there, it was divided up into 2 sections. So the one on the left-hand side was the Holy of Holies, which was where the ark was. And then the holy place, which is on the right-hand side of the box, was where the table of showbread, the menorah, which was the lampstand, was, and also the incense altar. So there was those 3 pieces of furniture that were in the holy place. And then in the most holy place, the Holy of Holies, was then the ark and the mercy seat. So, so on the east side of the tabernacle meeting was Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, and it gives the numbers there and their total population. So you can read all about that if you wish. And this is I like diagrams like this because it summarizes it for you. But they were to be the first ones to up sticks, because what would happen is that above the tabernacle meeting was a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And so when the pillar of cloud, which was representative of God's presence, decides to move, then everybody has their role, everybody understands what they need to do, and they pack up their gear and they go. And they follow the cloud, and they follow wherever it's going to go, and wherever God stops, then they stop. And then they pitch camp, basically. But it's not a higgledy-piggledy sort of exercise here. Everything is very, very organized. So people know exactly what to do. It's not like, oh, I thought maybe if you went first, that might be nice, and maybe I'm not quite ready. So it was, people went at certain times. So Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, they were the first ones to pack off and go, and they were the ones to lead the way. Now, it's interesting that the Lord Jesus Christ comes from the tribe of Judah, so they lead the way. Jesus leads the way. He's he's not behind. Okay. So then the next group of people to pack up and go was the southern contingent, which was Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. Okay. So all those tribes all pitched their tents down to the south of the tabernacle meeting. And then on the west, you had Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin, who were a relatively small bunch of people. Ephraim and Manasseh, of course, were the 2 sons of Joseph. Okay, so and because Levi is not counted here, they're the priestly tribe. We'll talk about them in a minute. They were camped immediately around the tabernacle meeting in their various families. Okay, so but they were close in because they had to service the thing. So these other people were on the perimeter. And then the north was the last group of people to leave, and that was Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. So you can see the populations of these particular people, and these would have been people. These particular numbers were males that were 20 years and older. All right. So that didn't include women and didn't include children. Now, the speculation is when you add up all these numbers together, you get just over 600,000. So that's 600,000 men of fighting age. So when you then incorporate the likely numbers of women and the likely numbers of children, you will get then between 2 and 3 million people that are situated in a very organized way around this place. So, and what is central is the presence of God. Okay, so now, so let's just dive off the outline here just very momentarily and talk about movement, okay? Because this was a very, very critical thing that takes place, because what the Israelites had to learn was to follow God. And some of this following of God was very, very physical. It was very practical. And so we're going to be just looking at Numbers 9, verse 15 to 23. But before I put that up on the screen, let me just put a picture of what the pillar of cloud may have looked like. Okay, so you can see the curtains that are there, which is the tabernacle compound, and then there is the tabernacle kind of in the middle there, and then you see another little puff of smoke going off the brazen altar. So this would be looking south. Okay, so we're sort of looking south. And so the east side would be over this way, and then so the other's the west, and we're sitting on the north side, basically, of the tabernacle. So you can see the various tents that are all situated around the thing. So that could have been, some people think that it was just a pillar of cloud. Here in this illustration, the cloud is going up and then covering the entirety of the camp, as it were, with a big canopy. So there is some Jewish scholars that sort of believe that. So I don't know which one's right. But during the evening, though, you had your pillar of fire at night. So it wasn't like God went to bed. Okay, so there was this pillar of fire which gave them light by night, and so this pillar of cloud and pillar of fire was evident, really, from the word go. I mean, as soon as they left Egypt, there was the pillar of cloud that led them by day and the pillar of fire by night. And when they got to the Gulf of Aqaba, there you read about how the pillar of fire during the evening then came between them and the army of Egypt, so to keep the two of them away. So the pillar of fire actually gave light to the Israelites, but on the other side of that power was darkness. Only God can do that. Where there's light on one side and darkness to the other. So, but to me, it's like, this is amazing. That the presence of God. There's no doubt about this. Okay. So let me just take these away here, and we'll put these verses up. Now I just want you to pay attention to how many times the word cloud is mentioned here. And so it says, now on the day that the tabernacle was raised up. This is kind of a summary statement. I know it's sort of a little farther into the book, but sometimes this is what the literature does, is it kind of encapsulates in short form what's been going on. The cloud covered the tabernacle, the tent of the testimony. And so the testimony is the ark where the 10 Commandments would have been placed. And the mercy seat was the lid that was on top. And you had the two angels that faced each other. And it is there where the glory of God was it rose up and then it was manifested in terms of a cloud. So the tent of the testimony from evening until morning, it was above the tabernacle like the appearance of fire. So it was always. The cloud covered it by day and the appearance of fire by night. And whenever the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, after that, the children of Israel would journey. Okay, so when the cloud rose, again, everybody understood what the procedure was. Everybody knew what their place was, what their job was, and so they just up sticks and moved, because they lived in tents. They did not live in permanent dwellings, because this was pilgrimage. Okay, this was the process of moving on, and in one's Christian life, you don't stay still. You move, but you go as God wills. So whenever the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, after that, the children of Israel would journey. And in the place where the cloud settled, there the children of Israel would pitch their tents. Verse 18, at the command of the Lord, the children of Israel would journey, and at the command of the Lord, they would camp. As long as the cloud stayed above the tabernacle, they remained encamped. Just to highlight there in verse 18, it says the command of the Lord. The command of the Lord. So, the presence of God is all about the command of God. Right, verse 19. Even when the cloud continued many days above the tabernacle, the children of Israel kept the charge of the Lord and did not journey. And so it was when the cloud was above the tabernacle a few days, according to the command of the Lord, they would remain encamped, and according to the command of the Lord, they would journey. And so it was when the cloud remained only from evening until morning, then the cloud was taken up in the morning, then they would journey, whether by day or by night, wherever the cloud was taken up, they would journey. And whether it was 2 days, a month, or a year that the cloud remained above the tabernacle, the children of Israel would remain encamped and not journey, but when it was taken up, they would journey. And at the command of the Lord, they remained encamped, and at the command of the Lord, they journeyed. And they kept the charge of the Lord at the command of the Lord by the hand of Moses. So now I didn't underline the phrase command of the Lord, but that appears a whole host of times. And the word cloud there appears 10 times. Now, in the entirety of the book of Numbers, the word cloud appears 20 times. So half of it is here. But this is what the Jews did in their writings, is they would summarize things, and they would talk, basically distill it down, say, look, this is very, very important. The cloud, okay, the presence of God. You see it. It's there. So it goes up, you follow it. If it comes down, you stay, so very stark. Okay. Now, so in the so this is a little diagram of the tabernacle compound again. So basically, you had the small rectangle is the brazen altar. The little circle is the laver or the wash basin, and then you have the main tabernacle there, which is divided into two parts: the Holy of Holies and the Holy Place. So, and then the white border is the curtain that goes around the whole thing. Now, the Levites lived immediately around it, and they were divided up into three main families, but there was one fourth family that was very, very specific to do certain things. Their numbers weren't accounted for in the main census of chapter 1, but they were numbered later on. And their numbering only included men who would serve in priestly duty between the ages of 30 and 50. So people that were below that, now there is a place where it does talk about the ages of 25 to 50. The reason that there's a bit of a difference there between the 25 and 30 is because it took 5 years to train men to exercise their priestly duty. So when they were talking about the 30 to 50 years old, these are the guys that are trained. Okay, so but there is a portion of the scriptures where it talks about the 25-year-olds. Okay, but it's that 5-year space, which is where they were trained to do this work. So so when the glory, when the cloud rose up, and everybody saw this. Okay, this was not they didn't have to send a telegraph to everybody and a little text message and say, look, incidentally, if you haven't been looking outside, the cloud's going up. Everybody saw this, and so everybody knew what to do. And so the first thing that took place, well, there's the cloud, and so the cloud is now going to, I know it looks a bit like an ice cream cone, but it then moved. Okay, so whichever direction it was moving, and we will look at later on what the journey was and what places they went to. So when the cloud moved on, we had Aaron and his sons pack up the ark. Okay, so now what is happening here, and this is quite essential to understand in the movement of this place, because the tabernacle couldn't just be taken down in kind of a whimsical sort of way. Because the ark was demonstrative of the presence of God, this was a holy thing. You could not look upon it. Okay, you could not gaze at it, because that's where God was. And so, God is holy, God is separate. And so what Aaron and his sons would do, because they were the high priests, they would go into the holy place, and what they would do, because the ark was inside the Holy of Holies in that area, the ark, the idea is that it was actually backed up against the veil that was represented there by that red line, which was between the holy place and the Holy of Holies. So that was the veil that was rent in two from top to bottom in the temple later on when Jesus died. But the ark would have been sitting up against that curtain. It wasn't at the back of the tent. It was up against the curtain. And the reason for that was because Aaron and his sons would go in and they would unhook the veil from the top of the tabernacle, and then they would lay it over the ark and tie it up and stick the poles through, and they would not see the ark because they couldn't see it. The only person that went in was once a year at Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, to make an offering in that place. So any other time you can't, so you can't see this thing. So you unhook it, and then you lay the curtain over the thing, and there was a whole procedure about how that was done. And then there was poles that were stuck in through the rings of the ark so that it would then be carried by other people. Okay, so the Aaron and his sons, that was their job. Okay, so then we move on to the next crowd here, okay, which was the sons of Kohath. Now these are all Levites. Okay, so this is the priestly tribe, and the children of Kohath. What they did was they packed up and transported the holy furniture. So they were then allowed to pick up the ark, but only by the poles. Okay, this is why back in the days when David was moving the ark back into Jerusalem, remember he put it on a cart, and your man Uzzah, put his hand to stabilize the thing, and God struck him dead, and that was because the ark was not being carried properly. And so what David did was he read the Bible, and he went, "Oh, the sons of Kohath, they're the ones that are supposed to carry this thing, not me." So anyway, so he got it right. So they carry the table of showbread, they carry the altar of incense, they carry the menorah, the lampstand. So that's their job. Okay, so they're packing up those particular things. So then the children of Gershon, they deal with the curtains and the cords. So they take down all the soft stuff. Okay, so there's curtains all around the perimeter of the thing. There's curtains that are associated with the tabernacle itself. So they take those things down because all the holy furniture has all been secured. So they carry that stuff. And then the children of Merari, they take the hard stuff. Okay, so they take the boards and the bars and the pillars and the sockets. So that's the hardware. The Gershonites are taking the software, all right, and the children of Kohath are dealing with the furniture. All right, so now they do this in this order. Okay, now when the cloud stops and then they set up camp again, the first thing that happens is the Aaron and his sons go to where the cloud is. They bring the get the Kohathites to bring the ark, and they set it down, but the Kohathites, they don't uncover it. Okay, so the children of Aaron, they position it exactly where God wants them. It's right there. So then the tabernacle gets constructed around it. So you don't build the tabernacle and then put the thing in. You put the thing where it should be, and then you build the structure around it. So now, once the structure is built, then the sons of Aaron go back in, they take the cover off, and they hang it up, and then that's it. Oh, yes. So it's very, very strict procedural stuff. Now, what's interesting is that when the sons of Judah, okay, the Judites, they're the first ones to go off, along with Issachar and Zebulun. They're the first ones to move off. They lead, then they go, and then it's the rest of them. So it's kind of interesting that when it's seen that the Israelites are to move and that the cloud of the presence is going, it's Judah that leads. So, and that's very indicative of the Lord Jesus Christ. He's the one that goes out before you. He's the one that leads. And so everything else then has to fall into place after that. So I just wanted to spend a bit of time just kind of fleshing that out and helping you to see the procedure that's there. And you see, this is the kind of thing when you read it, you go, yeah, okay, great, super, chapter, whatever. This is what we tend to do with boring parts of the Bible. And I don't mean to sound disparaging or irreverent, but that's kind of how we treat it sometimes. So, but to me, when you look at what's first, what falls into line, how it's done, the importance of procedure, the importance of holiness, it was very, very strict. Okay, well, let's get back to the outline here. We only got like one little thing. So then there was the spiritual organization in chapters 5 and 6. And I would say that was more to do about the leadership of these particular tribes, which we'll talk about here shortly. At the end of chapter 6, there is what's referred to as the Aaronic blessing, which is, I'll just read it to you read it to you very quickly. We're going to look at it next week, but just you'll know it when you hear it. It is the Aaronic benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. So that is what is referred to as the Aaronic blessing or the Aaronic benediction. Okay, so, and then there was a dedication of the altar, the consecration of the Levites. There was the second Passover that happened. So this was a year then after they left, okay? Provisions for guidance, those are in chapters 7 through 9. Then there is the start of this section about the rejection and judgment of the first generation of people. Because what they do is they journey then. This is their first test, really. This is the first time of packing up, where the glory of God, the pillar of cloud, now moves, and it moves up to Kadesh Barnea, which is just south of the Promised Land. So they go there, and then this is where we have the rejection of the land, the leader, and the Lord with the 12 spy escapade. Okay. So we'll get into that in more detail next week. And then there's more instructions for offerings, the confirmation of the Aaronic priesthood, and then there was the rebellion of Korah. Okay, and that's when a lot of people got zapped because of their rebellion and sin and so on. So it's interesting that despite the fact that there is rejection there, God still gives instruction about offerings. It's like, look, we can still get this right. All right. So, and then, because God could have says, you know what, boys, forget it. Just, you're dead. And we'll go into, I'm going to go into something else. When God starts a work, he'll finish it. Then there's provisions of maintaining fellowship with God. Now, this is where Moses disobeys God by striking the rock, because the first time he was told to speak to the rock. Okay, water came from the rock. And then God told him to, not speak to the rock, but to strike the rock the first time. But the second time, God told him very clearly, speak to the rock. But Moses was torqued off really at the people and upset, and so anyway, he goes ahead and hits the rock, and now water comes out, but because of that disobedience that Moses exercised within himself, that was him buying the farm in terms of not being able to get into the Promised Land. So very serious.
Well, is this a baby birthday or was it just facts?
Well, he was very frustrated, and you could maybe look at it that way and say, what was he really deliberate about it, or was he just acting out of frustration and kind of uncontrolled anger?
You wouldn't have thought it was.
Yeah. The thing is that he went ahead and did it, so, and the problem there is it's maybe not so much about motivation. It's more about, and intention. It's more about, well, that's what you did. Consequences, so, it could be, this might sound like a stupid example, but, you could have, say, you slap somebody in the head and then they died as a result. And you're going, oh, but I didn't mean to kill him. Which you probably didn't. You just meant to give him a slap. But it ended up in the man's death. And so then you have to go and serve time for manslaughter at the very least. So, so there's a lot of up and down that's going on in this book. Then there's the dealing of the new generation. Okay, it's because the people at Kadesh Barnea and the wilderness of Paran, they disbelieve God, and God judged them and say, right, you're not getting in. And so, but their children, the new generation is then going to get in, but some of them sort of were having it pretty tight too. So this was the story of the bronze serpent, because they were given off, turning against Moses, and God sends snakes. And then there's this whole really, really strange story about how Moses is then instructed by God to put together a bronze serpent, put it on a pole, tell everybody, look at the bronze serpent and you'll live. Which, almost sounds idolatrous, really. Just,
strict the rules that God laid
Yeah.
down and how you live.
Yeah,
And I think to myself, you look over your own life and you think of the sins that you have committed.
yeah.
And you're amazed that Jesus would die for them, but when you realize just how many more
Mhm.
you have committed, and you don't even know that you have committed them.
Yeah. I know.
And then you think,
Yeah.
oh, he took my sins and my sorrows and
Mhm.
made them his very own.
Yeah,
What a bundle of stuff.
yeah. Yes, and he knows exactly what they are.
Paradox.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff from the fall off, they compare.
So, yeah. So, now where it says there, the journey to the Transjordan, what that term means is that they get up to where the Jordan River is. Okay, and it's at that particular point where Moses died, and but there was preparations going on for them entering into the land. But the entrance into the land doesn't take place until the book of Joshua. Okay, so and then we have this other bizarre story about Balaam. Okay, Balaam was a prophet for hire. He was from Mesopotamia, which was kind of like Babylon, present day Iraq. That's where he was from, about 500 miles away. He was known for, if you hire me, I'll curse your enemy. Okay. So, so he was hired to do that by Balak, who was a king at the time, didn't like Israel. And but all his attempts to curse Israel were all turned into blessings. And so there's 4 blessings that he gives, and they're very, very interesting blessings in terms of what they say. So we'll probably spend a whole day looking at that. Okay, so we're not going to get through this book anytime soon. And then there's the preparations for conquest. So there's another census that's taken. So this is of the new batch of people. Okay. Laws about inheritance. Joshua is then told to succeed Moses. There's other various laws. Reuben and Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh, they settle for land east of the Jordan. So now that's a very interesting sort of story too, because you know why they settled for the east of the Jordan, whereas really what God wanted to do is say, look, here's the Jordan River, we're all crossing over, and there's the land. And all these guys, they all go, no, it's all right, we'll settle here. You know why? Their cows liked it. The cows. Their animals. They looked at their animals and said, well, they got grass here. They like it here. No, we'll not go. So the reasoning for not going into the blessing of God was because of their flaming cows. Bonkers, So anyway, we'll read about that too. And then there's the summary of Israel's journeys, which we're going to spend time looking at as well. There's a whole list of things, and to me, it's fascinating, isn't it? Now, this is a list of where the cloud went up, went to, settled down. They stayed there for a period of time. Cloud moves up, moves on, settles down, and so there's all these different spots. Okay, so and when you look at those different spots, Paul talks about various parts of life that we go through. So that'll be interesting. And then there's the warning regarding the Canaanites in terms of, when you go into the promised land, don't be getting mixed up with them. Okay, don't get embroiled in their idolatry and their gods and their woman and all that stuff. And then finally, it's getting ready for occupation of the promised land. So those are the last chapters of that particular book. So that's the outline, okay, of Numbers. So obviously we're going to go and revisit some of these things. But what I want to do in the last sort of 15, 20 minutes or so is to look at this particular item, which is about leadership, because leadership is very important. Okay. And there are leaders that are mentioned about every tribe. And when I looked at who those leaders were, and you know me and names, I looked at the meanings of their names, and boy, oh boy, there's a lot to be said about who these leaders should be. Okay. And this will then, I think, inform how we should walk with God. So there's leaders on the east side. Okay. Now, we're not talking about the east side of London here. We're talking about the east side of the tabernacle. So that was Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Okay. So those were those particular tribes. So there is a man who's in charge of this particular tribe. So we have here Nahshon, and who's the son of Amminadab, shall be the leader of the children of Judah. Okay, now, so the name of the man, the son of whoever, they're in bold. Okay, now what's in italics there is what that name means. Now, when I looked up Nahshon and discovered that the primary meaning of his name is to be an enchanter, I thought this whole exercise is going to go completely south, and I don't know if this is going to really work. But as I then drilled down into the name, it really has a lot to do with not so much enchanting in terms of, bad mystical wizardry sort of things. It's about a person who can observe signs. He learns by experience. He diligently observes what's going on. Leader needs to do that. Okay. Now, he's the son of Amminadab, and Amminadab means people of spontaneity. So that's kind of like, hey, let's go, let's do this. A lot of excitement, a lot of buzz. And his dad was probably a kind of a charismatic, sort of individual. So I'm not talking about charismatic in terms of like church. I'm talking about charismatic in terms of a gifted man who's out there and had a great impression on his son. Such that the son would be able to understand things, but not in some flamboyant kind of weird, unhinged way. So keep those things in mind as we put this together. Then there is Nathaniel, the son of Zuar, shall be the leader of the children of Issachar. Okay, so now I have underlined EL. Okay, now anytime you see EL in any name, that means God. Okay, so a lot of these names will have God in them. Okay, so Nathaniel means given of God, and he's the son of Zuar, which only just means small. Okay, now you might think, okay, what's the big deal there? Now I'm going to have a little section here at the end of this little list that will try to pull all this together. And then there is, now we have the children of Zebulun. So Eliab, the son of Helon, shall be the leader of the children of Zebulun. So Eliab, again, there's an EL in there, which means my God is father. And he's the son of Helon, which means strong. So this is the people from the east side. These are the first people to go. These are the people that are going to lead the people of Israel to where God is going. Okay, so these people need to know what's going on. They're not just following the others. Okay, they are in front. Now, if you take all this kind of idea together, this is what I sort of come up with, which is leaders need to be prepared to move and know what's going on. Okay, so that's the children of Judah. They need to understand that even small things are given of God. Leaders have strength that is rooted in a personal and fatherly relationship with God. So this is what is needed in spiritual leadership. All right. So now, if you only just read a pile of names and you don't look them up, you don't get this. Okay. So leaders need to be prepared to move. So that's the spontaneity. It's like, because you see, when God moves, when the presence of God moves, like it said in those verses in chapter 9, could have been 2 days, a month, or a year. Don't know. Gotta go. So we got to be prepared to move, but we have to know what's going on. Leaders need to know what's going on. And they understand that even the wee pokey things matter, because those are the things that are given by God. So don't discount, the small things. And there's strength there that's rooted in a personal and fatherly relationship with God. And I think that's important, those two particular caveats.
You said earlier on, big movement in the day or the week.
Yeah.
Or the year.
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, if some of those moves happen fairly close to each other,
Yeah.
you would be inclined to be more in tune with waiting on something happen.
Yeah.
Then the further it would go down the line where
Yeah.
you're waiting 6 months, 8 months, 9
Yeah.
months,
Mm-hmm.
you would, human nature would
Yeah.
drift from that.
Yeah.
And you
Mhm.
may not be switched on to
Yeah.
move.
Yeah.
They said, what is the sign of his coming?
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
where things have gone on and gone on as they were. And
Yeah. And here we are, nearly 2,000 years along the road.
Yeah.
So, but I remember Mike Williams, who used to be in charge of stars there a few years back. He was preaching on Joseph, when he was in Egypt and in the house of Potiphar, and he highlighted a phrase where it said, "after a while," and that's where Potiphar's wife then comes stepping in and says, "Would you lie with me?" and all this kind of stuff. But Joseph was in this situation, probably looking for an out. Looking, when's this going to end, God? I don't want to be here too long. But after a while, and then that's the point where you feel a bit settled. You let the hair down a little bit, and you just go, okay. And so your guard is not as G'd up as it would have to be. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Not on his mind, he was drifting.
Yeah, and he was not where he should have been, and then he's like probably not sleeping because he's thinking about where he should be, and then he's out cruising around on his roof, and he goes, and then has a big rubber neck, and so yeah. Okay, so let's look now at the people on the south side, because they're the next ones to leave. Okay, so the leader of the children of Reuben shall be Eliezer, the son of Shedeur. So we have again another one that has God in it. So Eliezer means my God is a rock. Okay, and then his dad means spreader of light. I think these are brilliant names. I think these are powerful. I think we should name our kids these things. Maybe they might get a bit stick at school. What's your name? Shadur. And then the leader of the children of Simeon shall be Shemshin. Yeah. So I like deferring to Eddie because he does take a stab at this. So, and the son of Zerubbabel. Yeah. So now the reason I have Adai underlined there is because that is the one of the names of God is
El Shaddai.
there's El Shaddai, but Elohim, and I can see it in my mind's eye, and it's just not coming to my head. It'll get there. Adonai. Okay, Adonai. Okay, is the name of God that they would use in holy convocation when referring to the Lord's four-letter name, okay, that we commonly refer to as Yahweh or Jehovah or something like that. But they didn't say that because they didn't pronounce it. So they would have used Adonai. So in place of that. So this man's name has basically Adonai sort of, built into it. So the first name there means peace of God. And then the second name, his father, means the rock of the Almighty. And then we have the leader of the children of Gad, that shall be Eliasaph, the son of Ruel. And so those mean respectively, God has added and the friend of God. Okay, so now this is what I've come up with this. Okay, leaders radiate the fact that God is their foundation, hence the spreader of light. Okay, God is my rock. Okay, that's foundational stuff. They realize that foundations are built with peace and not aggression. So that's where we have, God is the rock of the Almighty. That brings peace. The leader of these people should be generating peace and bringing peace, not aggression. Okay. And they establish a close relationship with God that continues to add to one's life personally and corporately. So meaning that, this happens, to you as an individual, but it also has impact on a group. Okay. I.e. church, this group, or whatever spiritual group that you're in. Now, I've added there that God will add to that which God's mind will promote, which in God's mind will promote the kingdom of God and his glory, but on the other hand, and subtract that which will distract from the kingdom of God and his glory. Okay, so because in that last little list there, you have that God has added. Okay, so, but, God is not just going to add things to you. He's going to add things that will accentuate himself. Okay. And because you as an individual are made in the image of God and reflect God, the things that'll be added will accentuate that. So that's why I've always talked about our personality that is made by God. God wants to accentuate that because that's a good thing. The problem is our character is messed up. Okay, we put things on our character because Satan and the world and the flesh come along and say, your personality stinks, we don't like it, so do something about it. So what we do is then we bolt on certain character things that then distract from who you really are. And so what God wants to do is say, look, we don't want to put bad things onto you, we want to put good things onto you. And take away the things that you thought were good and get rid of them. Okay. So, and that does take time. That takes a bit of effort. Okay, so that's the leaders from the south side. So we'll just read that again. That the leaders radiate the fact that God is their foundation. You realize that foundations are built with peace and not aggression, and establish a close relationship with God that continues to add to one's life personally and corporately. So now, so we've done the east side, done the south side. Now it's time to do the west side. Okay. So the leader of the children of Ephraim shall be Elishama, the son of Immihud. Okay, so that means God hears. So you see the L in there, and his dad's name means people of splendor. Okay, so this is has to do with glory and great things. Now the leaders of the leader of the children of Manasseh shall be Gimiel, the son of Padazur, which means basically the rock that is God has ransomed. All right. And so the son's name there means reward of God. And then finally, the leader of the children of Benjamin shall be Abidan, and he's the son of Gideoni. So basically that means, my father is judge. So anytime you see Ab, something in a Hebrew name generally means father. And then Dan is a pretty common thing, which means judge. Okay. So it's interesting when you take the word Dan and break it down into Hebrew as it's translated judge, it means quite literally the door to life. So a judge is the door to life, okay, because he can either put you down or let you go. Now, when you string all this sort of stuff together, leaders revel in the fact that God hears them. There's great excitement. Are you excited about hearing from God? There was this man was like that. And and they focus on the foundation of redemption, which brings reward from God. Okay, this is why we think weekly about the Lord Jesus Christ and how he ransomed us, he redeemed us, he bought us. Okay, and that brings us great reward. It's not based on us, it's not based on our own merit, but it's because of what Jesus has done. We then have an inheritance in him. And the leaders battle for justice and fairness as developed through the mature observation of elders. So the Gideoni, he was a warrior. He was the one that battled. And quite literally cut down the bad thing. And yet how that spoke to his son is that you do this in justice, you do this in fairness, and that was developed as he observed this from his father. Okay. Now, lastly, and this is where we'll finish for today. Oh, sorry. There you go. All right. So these people that take notes. So you other people, you take notes in your mind. Or you look for a CD.
Yeah.
So CD's old technology. It's not that old. So anyway, all right, you okay?
Yeah.
All right, okay, fine. Okay, now on the north side, this is the last set of leaders. So the leader of the children of Dan, Dan means judge, okay, shall be Ahiezer, and he's the son of Ammishaddai. So this has to do with my brother is help, and then the father's name means people of the Almighty. Then we have the leader of the children of Asher. When I was growing up as a young Christian, I always liked Asher. I told myself, even as like a 12-year-old, I says, if I ever have a son, I would like to name him Asher, because Asher means happiness. It's or blessedness, because it's tied in with the Hebrew word ashur, which means to bless. So didn't have any boys. So the leader of the children of Asher shall be Pagiel, the son of Ochran. So kind of interesting names there, because you have the son whose name means event of God, and then his father means to stir or trouble water. And so the idea there is, now we don't use the word trouble in terms of a bad thing, but it's, putting your hand in the water and kind of giving it a bit of a stir, and that causes ripples and stuff. And then the leader of the children of Naphtali, shall be Ahara, which is my brother is evil. That's a bit of a strange old thing. The son of Enon, which means having eyes. So you look at some of those names and you go, where's God in that? You know. But again, let's pull this together. So leaders fellowship with the people of God who can help. So the dad's name means, people of the Almighty. So this is people of God, and his son's name means brother. My brother is help. So, leaders need to be hanging about with the right people. Okay, people that can help. But so often people hang with the wrong people, and then you don't go anywhere, or you go the wrong place. Leaders see what could be perceived as bad things in terms of the stirring of the waters as events that God can use for good. Because I think Akran, as he probably maybe saw disturbances in his life, saw them as opportunities that God could use. Now, how often do we end up looking at bad things in our life and we go, that's a bad thing, and I've been dealt a bad deck of cards. And then we go, toss it in. Whereas God can use that, and I say this to people sometimes that I'm working with that, come from backgrounds of drinking drugs. I says, God used your drinking drugs actually to show you that you needed to be saved. So, and then the last thing there is to discern potential evil in the midst of kingdom work and act to mitigate it. Okay, so the Enon, the son there, means having eyes. And in Hebrew, that talks about having discernment and being able to understand stuff. Okay, because if your eyes are open, you can see it. If your eyes are closed, you can't see it. This was my problem with my right eye. My right eye was getting worse and worse. So it needed to be taken out and replaced. So, but his brother, basically, or the son rather, meaning my brother is evil, there is evil about, so we need to be able to discern those things that are in the midst of what's going on. And look, I've been involved in full-time Christian work from the late 80s, so I've been at it for a long, long time. And I have seen so much weird stuff, and I've seen situations that should have been nipped in the bud. But because of, I'm not sure what so-and-so might say, they get concerned about the fear of man and not about the fear of God. And so I've seen too many situations go septic and people losing the plot and people splitting up and going down silly roads, and they're wrecked. They're shipwrecked. That's what the Bible talks about. So I think these four collections of people speak an awful lot into spiritual leadership. So that is that.